Test.
Is this what they had you doing?
No. This is just me being me. You seen Dune, right?
I just watched it today.
Dune Part 2?
No, just one.
Dune,
Literally one, just today.
You have to tell me your thoughts. You have to be very careful because Dune, in my opinion, Dune Part 1 is one of the greatest movies of all time. Dune Part 2 is the greatest sci-fi film of all time. And there is a difference. But put together, they're a masterpiece.
I don't enjoy the casting. I don't like when there's a hype around actors and then they just keep getting roles because of that hype. That was my issue with Zendaya and that other dude. What's his name?
Timothée Chalamet.
But they did a good job. And I'm upset that I'm a hater on them. I hate on them. That's my issue.
Okay. I agree the casting could have been better. And it could have been more accurate. And I think that actually is a fair criticism of the films of Part 1 and 2 is that like they could have done better with the casting. I mean, let's be honest. Why didn't they use more Arab actors, more Middle Eastern actors? Because it's like, we know what you're doing. We know where the inspiration is coming from. Why not just like use that inspiration then? You know what I mean? Yeah. Instead of like trying to like, I get it's a story, it's fictional. The author had a certain vision. I get all that. I totally get it. But also it's like, why not just stay true to the representation? I don't know.
No, exactly. Especially since they've done that with all other Hollywood movies for the last 5 years have been representation movies and no plot, no meaning. This is the first time we've finally gotten a plot, a meaning, and then they do no representation. And I find that peculiar. They kind of used it for like the sub actors, you know, like
like not the main actors.
No,
extras, not even supporting actors or characters either. Just a lot of extras.
Just extras.
Yeah, like Javier Bardem. I think he's Hispanic, if I'm not mistaken.
You know what? It's so silly, man. I swear when Westerners try to... You know what the lisan al-ghaib means? Lisan al-ghaib that they keep saying?
Well, yeah, in the film it means tongue... Lisan
al-ghaib. It's not even in the film or not in the film. Just what it means and how they're using it even in the film is... Lisan al-ghaib means the tongue of... Ghaib is the unknown, the future.
Of the unseen. Tongue of the unseen.
Yeah.
That's how they use it in the film.
Yeah, that's how they use it. But they never explained that. They just keep saying, Lisan al-ghaib, Lisan al-ghaib.
Lisan al-ghaib.
You're like, what is going on? Yeah. It took me like halfway through the film. I'm like, oh, these...
But see, that's the thing about Dune, is like, this is a movie that takes itself seriously. It actually, as an audience member, it wants you to make leaps of logic in your mind rather than like dumb it down for you as if like you're a child watching the movie, because that's what all Marvel movies are. They're great. Marvel movies are awesome. They have their place. They're really amazing, but they're dumb movies. Like they're very like, they explain everything to you like you're a child watching the movie, as opposed to like you being an audience member trying to make those leaps of logic on your own. If that makes sense. Because Dune is a movie, like I said, it's just a movie that takes itself seriously.
That's an interesting take on it.
Yeah, because Marvel films don't take themselves seriously, and they know that. That's why they're made the way they are.
They use a lot of... I think Deadpool completely revolutionized the way people make superhero movies, because ever since then you get like this snarzy or whatever little... Oh, I'm a hero, but I make a lot of jokes.
I would say Iron Man was the film that did it.
Oh,
Iron Man. Yeah, because Iron Man set up the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah,
from that, because that movie was number one so successful. The way the movie was shot, there was not a superhero movie made like that before. Like, yeah, you had Spider-Man, but that was like 5 years prior, 6-7 years prior. This was a new path that Marvel Studios wanted to take with this whole cinematic universe, and they had this like 10-year plan, you know, for all the films. And so that's why I think Iron Man to me was like the defining movie that changed superhero movies.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know what was interesting too is that they used the concept of the Mahdi in Dune. You notice that?
Yes. So I read the book.
Okay.
So here's what happened, right? I watched the movie. It's 2021. I watched the movie, Dune Part 1, blown away. Like, just absolutely blown away, right? Because, again, when you've been watching Marvel movies for 10 years, right, Marvel movies are made with a certain, let's say, rhythm. There's a certain beat, right? It's like punchline, you know, you laugh, then it gets serious. punchline, you laugh, it gets serious. So like there's a certain flow to these Marvel films, right? And then you watch a movie like Dune, where it's like it's slow paced, it's very plot driven, right? It doesn't have much in there. So for example, you're not bombarded with like bad CGI. Everything's so simple in the film, so that makes everything else, like dialogue, like character arc, stand out, right? So I watch this film, I'm blown away. I read the book. The book is super dense. It's not like a Harry Potter book that you can pick up and just read like over the weekend. It's a very, very dense book because it's almost like written as fictional scripture. So it's very like deep, but the way that it was written, it was meant to just like create that sort of story in the actual book itself. So I read the book. The book had a lot of Islamic concepts and themes that it derived from Islam in and of itself, because the author Frank Herbert, he used Islam as an inspiration to create the story. And there's an entire glossary at the back of the book of Dune, which has tons of Islamic words that aren't even used in the movie. So like, yeah, you'll see Mahdi, right? You'll see like Lisan al-Ghaib, but there's also like jihad. There's also Ramadan is mentioned in the book. It's not mentioned in the movie, but Ramadan is mentioned in the book, right? So like usul is mentioned, fiqh is mentioned, right? So there's so many of these concepts, terms, and themes are used in the book that you just don't see in the movie.
Did you get a sense that he had an appreciation for Islam?
100%. 100%. Okay. I don't think, there's no doubt in my mind that Frank Herbert took these Islamic concepts and themes and was like, yeah, this is really great and all, but you know what? I want to make my own thing out of it and sort of just like do a disservice to Islam. I don't think that at all whatsoever. I think, in my opinion, my analysis of Dune, just the book Dune Part 1, not just Dune Part 1, the movie, but there's multiple books. There's like 6 books in the whole series, whatever. The first book, in my opinion, is the Western man realizing Islam is the answer. That's how I would summarize Dune. The Western man realizing Islam is the answer.
And the movie obviously did not give that depiction at all. I mean, unless you're Muslim, you almost can't tell. Do you think, or do you feel like even non-Muslims could tell this was very Arabized and Islamicized?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
that's a good question. I don't,
because the hijab was clearly right there. The hijab
it's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
there's even a scene in Dune Part 1 where like there's these pilgrims who are kind of like, looks like they're sitting in a prison, and they're literally sitting rocking back and forth. They have like tasbih in one hand, and it looks like they have like a almost like a, not even a Quran, but it looks like a Hisnul Muslim in the other hand. You know what I mean? Like in one hand. So it's like they're like praying, right? They're like doing like dhikr, doing adhkar. So would a non-Muslim realize that so much of Dune is based off Islamic concepts and themes? Maybe, if they want to take that extra step into that research.
Yeah, and we'll actually get to that about movies and how we can start propagandizing, or the underlying theme being Islam rather than a lot of the isms and schisms we see in today's world. But just for anyone, obviously, I think a lot of you who clicked on this video probably do know, this is Noaman Farouq, one of the main the main actor playing Hassan in the popular Yaqeen Ramadan series, with a passion for self-development, and you're actually full-time in finance.
Yes.
And I was actually shocked when you told me that behind the cameras, because I've already had the question as to how you got into this in the first place. And now I'm even more curious. And right before you were about to tell me, I told you, whoa, wait, I want to hear it live. So I'm curious, man, how did Yaqeen end up choosing you as the main character? And how did you decide to start doing this in the first place?
So what happened was the head of production, the director, Fauzi, he shows up to Roots one day. So Roots third space, community space here in Dallas. And they have their own coffee shop, Sohba, right? So me and my wife are there one day. We're just going there to do work, right? Because that's what the space is for. And this guy walks in, Fauzi, and he's just looking for actors for like to act for Yaqeen, right? We didn't know what it was for. He's just looking for actors. He first talks to my wife. He asked her, he's like, hey, do you want to be my thing, this acting thing for Yaqeen? And my wife goes, she's like, no, but my my husband likes to act, so you can ask him. And so he comes to me. Him and I have like a 5-10 minute conversation. I tell him that I used to do acting in high school. Like I did theater in high school. I did post-college classes. I did post-acting classes in college, sorry. And he's like, okay, cool. So like I gave him my email. And then like a month later, there were auditions for the series. I don't actually know what happened as far as like the auditions because I couldn't make the auditions that day. My wife was having her bridal shower that was coming up, and I had to actually help with getting the bridal shower ready. I had to meet up with a friend. We had to make something for the bridal shower, so I couldn't make auditions. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh no, I won't be able to be casted for this series. I won't be able to be in it. So I was really bummed out about it, right? And then like 3 weeks later, I get an email that, about like the upcoming series and like when they're going to film, and like they still casted me as the main actor. So I actually don't know what happened as far as like, were there actually auditions that day? If there were, did like nobody show up? And so they decided to just go with who they already thought would be good for certain characters. And the rest is history. We started filming in like the second week of December, which was like a week after my wedding. We filmed the second week of December. And 2023. So all of this is happening in 2023.
Wait, so this was a couple months ago?
Yeah. This was a couple months ago. So all this is happening in 2023, right? I should have mentioned that. But we filmed in December, literally just 3-4 months ago, however long it was. We filmed in December, and then we filmed all of January. And yeah, it was a pretty, I wouldn't say, I guess I would say it was an intense shoot, right? Because it's like you get off work and then you'd have to be on set by like 5:36. And usually it would start with like prayer. We'd start with prayer, or we'd start with eating first. That's usually when people would break, is we would eat first, and then we would pray Maghrib, usually Maghrib, and then we get into shooting, right? And we did that for 2 months straight.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you end up out? I'm actually shocked to hear that you did acting classes and did theater in high school, because not many Muslim men that I know have gone into this, and even Muslim women. Did you ever feel like you were going to end up doing this someday?
No.
Okay.
No. It's when I was at a crossroads in my early 20s when I wanted to really pursue the deen, excuse me, and take it seriously, but I also wanted to pursue acting at the same time. And being young, not really being involved with the Muslim community, not really having any guidance on this, on how to reconcile both of these two paths, right? Because most of us, we kind of have this like all or nothing mentality. We think that like we either have to do one thing and disregard the other, right? Or in fact, it's like you can do both. And you not only can you do both, you can still stick to your principles as a Muslim by choosing something that, let's say historically, was kind of like not the best ideal path as a career, if that makes sense, like acting, right? So I'm at this crossroads. I'm 20 years old. I'm like, do I choose acting, or do I like, do I want to take my deen more seriously? And so I just was like, you know what? Let me just take my deen more seriously. So that was 8 years ago, right? So going into this series, I haven't acted in 8 years. So I took a gamble on myself, like, I don't know how well I'm going to do. They don't really know how well I'm going to do either, because I haven't done acting in so long. But, yeah, alhamdulillah, it was, it really, doing this series, for me, felt like I kind of brought back this passion that I once had when I was younger, and now that I want to genuinely pursue, inshallah. And not just genuinely pursue for myself, because it's something that I'm passionate about, and because everyone has passions, everyone has hobbies, things that they're passionate about, right? I also want to do this as a way to serve the ummah, and really like have that sincere intention. I want to be able to serve the ummah, be able to create spaces, opportunities for other Muslims who want to get into acting, right? And I think that this, for me, is how I want to serve the ummah.
Yeah. And as we spoke over the phone, I think Yaqeen has opened the doors and cracked open a space for Muslims to start entering this field, because we've never seen film in this production level by American Muslims. It's obviously in the Middle East and in Pakistan and India and stuff.
Yes, or Turkey.
Yeah. But it hasn't been in the West. But before we get into that, because that is actually something that we'll talk about, what was probably the most memorable or hardest scene for you as an actor during this series?
Most memorable. The most memorable definitely was, so there's a scene in the 10th or 11th episode, I think, maybe 11th episode, where my character Hassan, he's just going through it, man. Like things are just not going his way. He's getting frustrated. He's getting angry. He's not really on the deen either, right? Like he's totally off the deen. He kind of like gets into smoking too, and he runs into an old Muslim friend, and the Muslim friend wants him to like sit down and sort of like kind of explain himself. And my character Hassan, he sits down on the bench, and when we filmed that, the idea is that like my character, this is where he breaks down. Like he's just like sort of like totally venting out to his friend, like all of his issues, all of his difficulties, his struggles, what he's been going through. And it was a very emotional scene, right? Like I really had to like get into it. Like I really had to like, this is where like I had to, remember what my acting chops were like, right? Like remember what I learned from acting to be able to like really get the scene, that what I felt like what I wanted the scene to be like, or what it should have been like, what was envisioned by Fawzi. Excuse me. And so we filmed the scene. I think we did like two takes. And it wasn't 2 takes because we had to refilm it. It was just like we're doing different angles, right? So we're doing like a wide shot, and then we do like a medium shot, and then like a close up, right? And I remember like I'm just like totally getting into it. Like I'm like yelling, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, and then like I cry, right? The character, he cries, and so I get myself to cry, and it was like dead silent in the studio, like everyone was quiet. And I'm just like totally into it, just like crying, getting angry and frustrated, and when Fawzi said cut, the crew actually like basically gave me a standing ovation for it.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, dude, that was kind of cool. that was cool. That made me feel really like, wow, subhanAllah. Like that was, it really paid off. Definitely.
Oh, and what's going on in your mind through something like this? Because I know personally I can't act because I feel too self-conscious.
Yeah. What's going on in my mind is like, I just know I need to do the scene and give 110%. For me, like, I think alhamdulillah, and this is what I find so interesting is that like, yeah, it's been 8 years since I've acted, but I feel like I picked up where I left off when I started acting, when I started shooting for this thing. And so for me, it was like, I just know, okay, I have to get through this scene, just play the scene out, give 110%. If you need to reshoot it, if we're going to reshoot it, let's reshoot it. Right. And so that was just going through my mind. Just give 110%.
And as Khaled Noor Hussein, he was actually one of the extras on Yaqeen, and he came on the show last week. He said that we're so used to MSA style sketches and stuff like that. When did you realize this was serious and the acting was serious?
So here's when I realized this was serious. It's actually the first day I get on the set, because Yaqeen has they have an entire office which is like dedicated for Yaqeen as an organization. Part of this office, part of the building has a studio inside it. So when I walked into the studio, I was like, whoa, this is legit. Like this is an actual filming studio. You have like professional lighting, professional cameras. You have like a whole wardrobe. You have a makeup department, right? Like it's a whole thing. You have an assistant director. You have the director, the producer. Like it was a whole thing. And that's when I realized like, this is legit. This is a legit production that they were doing.
And the rest of the crew also took it seriously. I mean, you have Noaman and his wife also doing this.
Yes.
Did they take it as seriously?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like
they did a great job, by the way.
Yeah, mashallah. So whenever Noaman and I, when we were to act in one scene, like
Noaman's the father.
Yes,
by the way.
yeah. So Noaman plays my dad in the series. There were several outtakes because like him and I would just laugh. Like we were just because like the scene was just funny, or like he's laughing at me, I'm laughing at him. We're just having a good time. But everyone did take it seriously, right? It wasn't just like, oh, this is just like something that Yaqeen is doing. No, this is like an actual production. And like, man, the crew, dude, the hours they put in, dude, they were at the studio until like sometimes like 2 a.m, 3 a.m, multiple times throughout the week, 3 a.m, you know? And so like, when I say that they were dedicated, they were dedicated, man. Like the crew is very, very dedicated, mashallah, you know? And yeah, even though most of them already work for Yaqeen, regardless of that, they still were putting in like that, putting in the hours of like, okay, we're going to stay here until 2 a.m, 3 a.m, make sure everything's okay, right? So like, mashallah, very, very dedicated.
And it felt like it, as someone who is has actually been watching it every day and a fan of the series, I felt that all the actors took it seriously.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even tell they were acting. When I watched Netflix, I could tell when they're acting. And when I was watching you guys, I couldn't, mashallah.
Yeah, mashallah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
Now, what was one of the harder scenes for you to do? Is it also the same as the most memorable?
You know what? It's not the same. So the hardest scene that I did, that's a good question. You know, I would say the hardest scenes that I did was, this is going to be a spoiler.
It's going to be coming out Wednesday, so there's probably about 5 to 4 episodes left.
I don't know if this happens yet, if this will happen. Okay, so spoiler alert. If it doesn't happen yet, spoiler alert. You can like timestamp this as a spoiler. So my character, obviously, you see him going from like an infant to a child, teenager, young adult. Obviously, it's going to be elderly, right? Because that's what makes sense. So the scenes of me being old was very difficult. When I think of like an old person, I just think of not just like an old person. When I think of an elderly man, I think of my father. My father is not like, he's not hunched over in a cane. Right, so
you know he's gonna be watching this, right? Go ahead.
That's all right. But he's not hunched over, you know, with a cane. So like when I'm thinking of an elderly man, I'm just thinking of somebody who's kind of like still very mobile. He can bend over, put on his shoes very easily, right? Those were the hardest scenes for me because I'm like, well, then how do I get myself to like, how can I get myself to be an older version of Hassan, but not make it look so obvious that I'm playing an old man? Does that make sense? Because it's like, I don't want to make it obvious that like I'm playing the old man, because anybody can play the old part. Like you just hunch over and have a cane. That's easy. Anybody can do it, right? But like, how do you actually get yourself to that point as an actor? How do you get yourself to that point, right? So those were the hardest scenes for me. Easily the hardest scenes.
And I was joking around with Noaman the other day, and I was like, bro, I felt like you were in your element when you were an older man. He was like, yeah, that's when I really felt it. He did a great job as an old man. So this is a silent film, as we were saying. We were wondering, are you Leonardo DiCaprio or are you Charlie Chaplin? And we decided you're Charlie Chaplin because this is the first film and the first silent one. But what's curious is, were you guys actually speaking when you're...
Yeah, so when we were filming, it was all improv. There was no actual script. There was a storyboard. There was a storyboard for how they wanted the scenes to look generally, but there was no script, right? All of what we were saying when you see us on film, when you see us watching the episodes or whatever, we're just doing improv. That's all we're doing, right? So we're just like kind of like making stuff up on the spot. Yes, Fozie's giving us direction on like what's kind of happening in each scene, but all of it was improv, right? And that does take away from, let's say, like the acting part, right? But the reason why it still works is because this was just a more narrative-based series. It wasn't an actual series, if that makes sense.
Script-based.
It wasn't script-based. It was just all narrative. So that's why let's say...
So at one point you yelled, "Leave me alone." Did you actually yell, "Leave me alone"?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. When I mean, I was always fully into it. When I yelled, I had to yell. When I always like, okay, I would just tell myself, I'm going to act as if like you're going to hear my audio. So I'm just going to like give it my all, you know? So, oh yeah, when I yelled, I yelled. Oh yeah.
And when I talk to you, because I know a lot of Yaqeen employees, alhamdulillah, and whenever I talk to them, you could really feel that they get a sense of the importance of the work that they're doing. And one of the best ways to truly know someone is to live with them or do business with them. What have you gotten to see about Yaqeen and Omar Suleiman, Sheikh Omar Suleiman, that you otherwise wouldn't have if you didn't work with them?
Yaqeen is an organization that is sincere. They're sincere about what they do. They are sincere with their efforts. They always prioritize the deen over everything else. Always. You know, because they understand that they're probably the most prolific, if not they are the most prolific organization, Islamic organization, institute. Not, I wouldn't say institute, because institute you think of like school, whatever. They are the most prolific Islamic organization in the United States. And they understand with that comes responsibilities. It comes with certain expectations, certain standards. And they understand that. And from what I had seen from the 2 months being on set, working with, you know, with whether it's Fawzi or whoever, right? There are people who just they take the deen seriously. They know the deen is not just like, oh, we're gonna make this acting thing, but like break a lot of Islamic guidelines just so we can like get the viewership. That's actually not what it's about. It's about how can we create this new approach to, let's say, Islamic
storytelling, filmmaking.
Islamic storytelling. How can we take this new approach but adhere to the deen at the same time, right? So,
did you get to sit down or talk to Sheikh Omar Suleiman at all? Or was his narrative his narration was completely different than the acting?
Okay,
right?
okay, yes. So, okay. Sheikh Omar had to film his narration completely separate and on completely separate days from when we were filming the scenes. They had actually blocked off a week and a half just to film Sheikh Omar's narrative scenes. Literally a week and a half just so they can film him, right? I guess I should say it again, like another spoiler alert, right? Another spoiler.
People love that
stuff.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. There's a spoiler where I am in a scene with Sheikh Omar. And
no way. You break the fourth wall?
Yes. Oh, dude, yeah, because it's so okay, yeah, so this is a huge spoiler because dude, this is gonna be so cool. So there is a scene where Sheikh Omar is next to my character at the hospital when he's old. And Sheikh Omar is making dua for this character, right?
Oh, I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about that.
It's a really cool idea because it's like he breaks the fourth wall, right? It's going to be so cool. I can't wait for you guys to see it. But when we shot that day, when we filmed that day, I was talking to Sheikh Omar for a bit, you know, because he's sitting right next to me, right? And so like we're just like talking, like we're just casually talking, and he's very very mashallah down to earth, man, like so down to earth. And I think I would say generally speaking, the Muslim community, we've learned not to put people on pedestals. I think for the most part we've learned that. For the most part, I think each generation has to relearn that. So I think right now the Gen Z Muslims are learning that. I would say for the most part, definitively, millennial Muslims, Gen X Muslims, we've realized that, okay, we shouldn't put people on pedestals. Humans are infallible. They make mistakes. We're all sinful. With that being said, when you actually meet someone in person and you get to work with them, even if it's for a little bit, you realize the type of people they are, right? And with Sheikh Omar, just like what I said, very down to earth, mashallah. So down to earth, dude. Like, he's so cool, man. Mashallah, like, legit a cool guy. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
It takes a lot of work to get to that, you know, especially if you're at the level he is. Like, Imam Tom gave me advice once. He told me, be careful with this, with fame and so on.
Yes.
It's like a minefield. You may not come out the other side with all of you intact.
Right.
And so to keep yourself intact, it takes a lot of jihad, a lot of work, man.
Yeah.
Do you feel that this is the first step in opening the doors for Muslim actors at a time where many of our films in the West and shows are propagandized with LGBTQ and liberal and just isms and schisms all across, trying to mold the fabric of society a certain way? I think there's an opening for us Muslims to still create Western films, but have the undertone, as we were talking about with Dune, of Islam and Islamic principles. Do you think that this was the first step?
100%. 100%. This was definitely a huge milestone for Muslim production. Huge. We have Muslim experts in the industry. Like, we have Muslims in the Hollywood industry doing specific roles, whether it's like producing, whether it's filming, whether it's, being the cameraman, whether it's working on lights, key grip, whatever, right? But for all of those people to come together to make a production like this, it's like, okay, not only is this the step in the right direction, it's just like what you said, this is going to open up so many opportunities, man. So many opportunities, because there are like, sorry to just cut you off. There are like Muslim acting casting call things, right? In fact, Fauzi he told me about a Instagram page. It's called MA Casting, Muslim Acting Casting, or Muslim Actors Casting, whatever, right? And they look for Muslim actors, right? Whether it's like but this is like a Western, thinking like the US or Canada, right? So like they're looking for Muslim actors in the US or in Canada, right? So like we have stuff like that, but those are just casting calls, right? To actually have a full production team to make something like what Yaqeen did, like, yeah, that I'm very excited about the future, very hopeful, very optimistic, right? And to play to your point about like, yeah, Muslims, we can make movies, Western movies with Islamic undertones, absolutely. Why can't we, right? Why can't we make our own films with certain elements, certain themes, certain concepts, right?
Yeah. What, like Dune, the women were modest the entire way. The entire movie, if I remember correctly. As long as the obviously the romance scenes outside of those,
there's
the clothing.
How many quote unquote romance scenes are in Dune? Part 1 and Part 2, there's maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah,
and they're and compared to what we are used to seeing, like that what you see in Dune is like nothing, if that makes sense, right? And yes, you're right. Yeah, even in the films, like even in Dune, people are very covered up. They're very modest. They're wearing very modest clothing, right? You don't see, like, you don't have to, like, lower your gaze when you're watching the movie. Like Oppenheimer, right? You have to lower your gaze at a certain point in the movie, right? With Dune, it's like, yeah, people are covered up. People are modest. There's hardly any, right, like, romance scenes in the film. But what happens? Dune Part 2 is one of the... They just passed their 1 billion mark for, like, domestic film. Domestic gross film, whatever. Right? So...
And it just shows, man, because we have a fitra as humans, even Americans, man. They criticized Oppenheimer for its sexuality.
Yes.
Over and over again, I see Americans on Twitter, not Muslims, going, "What was the point of this scene?"
Yes.
What was the point of this scene?
Yes. Actually, so that just reminded me. Henry Cavill, he plays Superman. He played The Witcher in The Witcher series on Netflix. He doesn't do he doesn't do sex scenes. He doesn't like sex scenes. He's like, why? Why do I have to do this? What is the actual point of it? And it's true. It's like, I actually was thinking about this morning. It's hard for me to sleep after Fajr, so I have a lot of thoughts, right, in my mind. So I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking, what is the difference between some of these films that have full-on nudity and pornography? What's the difference? Some of these movies are basically pornography, but we don't classify them as pornography because they're produced by Hollywood, right? Why could you technically say Oppenheimer was a pornographic film about a man who created the atomic bomb? I think you could. I think there's an argument to that.
Yeah.
But we don't see it that way because it's a Hollywood produced film. Oh, it has Cillian Murphy. It's produced. Oh, it was directed by Christopher Nolan, right? Or the same thing with Game of Thrones. Man, Game of Thrones had so much nudity. I watched the first episode of Game of Thrones, and this is like 10 years ago, man. I watched the first episode. I'm like, I'm good. yeah, I'm good. I'm not gonna watch the rest of the show, right? But that's also pornography, man. Like, Game of Thrones is pornography. It doesn't matter if you put HBO onto it. It doesn't take away that it's pornography. It's still pornography at the end of the day.
Bro, I love that you mentioned, and that's exactly what it was, is we watched you grow from a child to at this point where you are now.
Yeah. So, right? Like, mid-30s.
Yeah. And there's an emotional connection that the viewer actually ends up having with you and the cast and the family. I was very upset when the father passed away. I see Noaman every day. And I was very upset when the father passed away. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What's that to say? And what can we say about the emotional connection and the emotional changes that we can impact the masses with something like storytelling, especially if it's done correctly for the sake of God?
There's such a huge influence when it comes to that. There's such a huge impact that this type of storytelling can make, because it brings you back to your morality. Sorry, it brings you back to your mortality. I always confuse the words morality and mortality. Sorry.
That's a philosophically very interesting thing to confuse.
So this type of storytelling brings you back to your mortality. It makes you realize that, okay, I don't have forever to live. One day I'm going to die. And I'll even tell you something. When I was filming the scene, so obviously there's a scene when my character's father, when Hassan's father dies. Filming it is one thing, right? Like, you have a couple of outtakes. It's funny. You laugh sometimes, which we did have several outtakes because I kept laughing and Moment kept laughing. But watching it is another thing, because you get to watch the final product. And that episode is a very emotional episode.
Yeah.
That was I didn't expect to actually, even myself, I didn't expect to feel so impacted by that episode. It was actually my favorite episode, I would say. Because it's like, it reminds you of your parents.
Yeah.
It reminds you of your parents. It reminds you, watching this series, it's a thought that I had the other day as well, which is, when you watch this series, you see the life that Hassan's father has and the life that Hassan has are completely two different lives, man. They're completely two different lifestyles. And it makes us think about the life that our parents had and the life that we have. How they're vastly different. So I'll tell you a story about my father, and I'll tell you a story about me, okay? My father was extremely poor growing up. Very, very poor. I didn't realize how poor he was until he told me this story, which is, when he was growing up as a child, he was so poor, him and his family could not afford new clothes, even just for Eid. Just for one day, they couldn't afford new clothes. They would just wash their old clothes and just wear them the next day, right? And that embarrassed him so much, because he saw people on Eid with like new clothes, right? He saw his neighbors with new clothes, people at the market, whatever, at the masjid. They all had new clothes, but he didn't have new clothes. And that made him feel very embarrassed, right? And so as a child, he grew up as a child making dua to Allah. Ya Allah, don't make Eid come. Can you imagine that? As a child, you're growing up. This is a dua that you're making as a child for years. Ya Allah, don't make Eid come. That was your dua. Then we look at our life, right? This was our parents' life. We look at our life. What is the dua we made as a child? Ya Allah, I want that toy.
Make Eid come now.
Yeah, make Eid come now. Ya Allah, I want that new toy. Ya Allah, I want that new video game. Just the
clothes is an afterthought. I don't think you and I have ever thought about a lack of clothing.
The difference between these two worlds, and that's what you see in the series, right? Like, that's why I think the series is so impactful. And I think that's why when you make a film, because we're talking about the series, so specifically when you make a film and you ground this film in something that is true and real, not some man-made ideology, not some nonsense that you just invented 100 years ago, something that is true and real and that will always be true and real. When it's grounded in iman and grounded in faith, grounded in the belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it changes the way you do everything, and it changes the outcome and result of everything as well.
Yeah.
And
I thought Noaman was going to be the main character. It took me a little second to recognize that you were starting to become the main character.
Yes.
I actually had to ask one of the Yaqeen employees. I was like, "Wait, is it stranger?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's a little kid that's growing up." I was like, "Oh, yeah." So what you said is very true, because I was looking at his life first, and then when he passed away, and then seeing your life, your character's life, and when his character passed away.
Yes.
And that episode actually was my favorite as well. And it really made me tear up. And as I was going through the comments, some of the comments were extremely heartbreaking. People were talking about how it impacted them, and how many of them had lost their father.
Or children.
Their children.
Yeah.
Some of them were like... I don't know if it's appropriate if we brought up some of the comments.
No, I think we should, man. Like, because I was reading the comments too. I've been reading the comments on these videos, and I generally, because I've produced content in the past myself, generally I avoid comments, right? Because it's like, it doesn't matter if you see 100 positive things. If you see one negative thing, it throws you off. And I'm sure you understand that as well, right? You see one negative thing, it throws you off, right? But with this, subhanAllah, it's like every single comment on every single video on each of these episodes is just positive, all positive stuff, all how it's relatable. One of the most common things I've seen on these episodes, the number one comment I see is Sheikh Omar is talking about me. That's the number one comment I see, right? Because that's what I love about this series, is that it was... Yes, it's kind of general, but it's also specific.
No, it's very specific.
But it's both. It can be both.
Yes.
Right? Because it's like, it talks about financial difficulty. It doesn't necessarily talk about like homelessness.
Yeah.
Or like being an entrepreneur and just like totally like losing all your money, right? It just talks about like general financial difficulty, right? Or like the loss of a loved one, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be like the loss of like, you know, like a pet. You know, some people, like when they lose like their cat or something, yeah, it's emotional. But like, this is, again, like, because it's general but also specific at the same time, I think that's why so many people can relate to it.
And honestly, I was kind of doubting it when I first watched the trailer. I was like, I was hoping he was gonna make a Hellfire one. I thought that's what he was gonna make because he did Jannah. So when it was Why Me, I was like, I was shocked. This is my favorite, and I didn't realize that. Rahim, can you pull up actually we'll tell you which episode it was, and then we'll look at some of these comments, because after I read those comments, subhanAllah, I was like, okay, I'm actually never complaining about my life again.
Subhanallah.
As you can see, man. We're probably going to leave it off screen anyway, so you don't have to record it. Sure. Have you had a lot of people coming up to you?
More so now. Not at first. Not like within the first few episodes that you see me, like episode 9. Episode 9 is when I come in, right? Episode 9, 10, 11, people weren't really saying much. And then when they realize that I'm still in the episodes, like episode 12, 13, 14, 15, then people are like, oh, this is just going to be the same guy. So now people are starting to recognize me.
Yeah.
Now people are starting to recognize me. I think you wanted to do...
yes, my 4-year-old daughter passed away from brain cancer. That, bro, because I was already in shambles at this point from this episode, and then seeing that actually, people talking about their children dying from cancer, and I know someone personally whose child died from cancer, and the amount of, you can tell the pain and the difficulty of it from how often they're at the gravesite. So this series, mashallah, man. I mean,
literally every comment, it's like my dad died, my dearest husband returned to Allah. Like, I lost my 3-year-old son. You know, my dad returned to Allah. Dude, subhanallah, man. Yeah. You know, but see, I love that people can relate to this, man. I really do, because it's like.
And the thing is, not to cut you off.
Yes.
All of them are grateful to Allah.
Subhanallah.
If you look at their comments, they're like, but I'm being patient and I miss them, and may Allah allow me to join me with them. They're reiterating what the episode told them, right? Because the episode tells you, Omar Sulaiman at some point, Sheikh Omar says, you know, you can either, there's multiple ways of grief. Sure. I think there's like 3 ways, and then you can either be this or that. Yes. And they were all trying to portray the best form of grief. Yeah, I think one of them is rida, or being okay with Allah's judgment. Yeah, man. I think that's how you know. Like for us. Look, yeah, he just said right there. I feel like Sheikh is speaking to me directly.
Very, very, very common thing for people to say. Sheikh is speaking to me. For us, see, that's when I see comments like that, for me, it's like, alhamdulillah, we did our job.
Yeah.
The fact that people can relate to it, the fact that people are benefiting from the series, that was the number one thing. Can people benefit from this? This is what the number one thing was. Can people improve in their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Like, can they grow in their faith with the series, right? And that was the number one thing. Like, how can we get people to like grow in their faith, connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And so seeing comments like that, it's like, alhamdulillah. It seems like, alhamdulillah, like mission accomplished, you know?
Is there some interesting behind the scenes insight you can give us that we would otherwise not be able to get as the audience? Not necessarily, what did you call it earlier? Spoilers.
Yeah.
Just behind the scenes.
Just behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a recurring character that plays multiple characters, which is kind of funny because it's kind of like we were kind of like just messing around. So like, so Fawzi is actually in it multiple times as multiple characters.
No way.
So in episode 9, he plays like my manager who's like yelling at me. In one of the other episodes, he's like an uncle at the masjid. He's like praying next to me. And so he's like just playing multiple characters, right? Because it's like
he's like Quentin Tarantino a little
bit. He's kind of like
putting himself in his own script.
Yeah. So you're pulling up episode 9.
I think it's a little bit in.
This was a lot of fun to shoot too. That's Fawzi right there as a customer.
Oh.
I forgot he was a customer too. But if you skip ahead.
And Fawzi's the director and producer, right?
He is the director. I don't think he actually go to the beginning. I'm sorry. This is it should be after this. Oh, I don't know if maybe he cut it out. It may have been cut out.
Cuz I
there it is. Yeah. So there's Fawzi again. There's Fawzi again. Yeah.
Bro, I love him, man. I followed him on Instagram. Just binge watched him for a while. I think he is the producer too. Wait, did I miss this episode? I don't think I watched this. Because I don't remember you and Naveed smoking a cigarette outside with
yeah,
with your chicken outfits on or whatever this is. Go down, Raheem. Which episode is this?
This is episode 9. Yeah. So I would say like so like you have like a recurring character, kind of like it's just being funny, right? It's like let's just throw that in there, right? Yeah. Or like there's a character who plays, so his name is Shahir. He was one of the like assistant cameramen. He was in charge of like moving lighting and stuff like that. He played the same homeless man like throughout the entire series, which is also kind of funny too.
There was the same homeless man.
Yeah.
Bro, that was pretty intense right there.
Oh yeah, the scene where he ODs. Yeah. My friend ODs. Yeah,
he doesn't die, right? That confused me.
No, he's dead. He's dead. Yeah.
Jeez.
So you were confused by that?
Yeah, I was confused by that.
Okay.
I had to watch it. Okay. I watched it twice actually. I was trying to get a sense.
There's Hamza, bro. Qobali, man. That was the I think that was the first thing we filmed. This episode. This is episode 9, Raheem. Yeah.
Dude, you did a fantastic job, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I'm not saying this just because you're here. You did a fantastic job.
Alhamdulillah.
You think you're gonna keep doing this?
Yes. I had an audition the other day.
Very nice.
Yes. So, inshallah, yes, I want to keep doing this. Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is how I want to serve the deen. This is how I want to. I just have a passion for it, so I want to keep doing it, obviously. On the side, right? I'm not going to just ditch my full-time job right now to do acting full-time. That's just not smart. But yes, like as an example, I had an audition the other day. I auditioned for a theater play. I didn't get it, but life goes on, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, okay, you didn't get the audition. Okay, next thing. And so for me right now, it's just like finding whatever play I can audition for, or maybe like do a short film thing, commercial, whatever, do acting classes, probably get back into acting classes because it's been so long, right? So I sort of need a refresher. I'm obviously rusty, and so yes.
And inshallah, man, I can really feel there's a production studios starting to brew in Dallas. There's too many editors and directors and producers in Dallas brewing, especially our generation.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I at least know like 6.
Yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of people who just do photography, right? I mean,
no, it's different. I'm not gonna lie to you. It is.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's definitely different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I figured like you kind of have the same eye. Like if you have an eye for photography,
yes, you have the same eye.
Yeah.
But the skill set and the hours it takes to get into videography is heavy, because you're editing. Like you're using a software. Because me and Raheem use the software that Netflix uses, DaVinci. And so does Felzy. Felzy uses that as well.
So I'm shocked. I didn't realize Netflix uses DaVinci.
Yeah.
No way. So I'm familiar with DaVinci. So. Like I've used DaVinci to like edit short clips for like Instagram or TikTok or whatever. I love DaVinci. Yeah.
Wow.
I've used DaVinci before.
Very nice.
I also have used like Adobe. Is it Adobe Premiere?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
I like DaVinci more. Personally, I like DaVinci more.
Most people do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for some reason, a lot of companies use Premiere, though. I don't know why. But yeah, inshallah, I think we'll be getting the studios up and running in the next like 10, 15 years.
No, 100%. I would even say the next 5 to 10 years. I can see it happening.
I can see that.
Next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, like Yaqeen being probably like the most prolific like production studio here in the Dallas area, if not like the United States, right? Like,
I mean, I don't want to speak too soon, but I think Yaqeen is behind the scenes, inshallah, getting in talks with a lot of young editors about some other projects, inshallah.
Yeah. You know what another thing was? They did have difficulty finding actors. Yaqeen had difficulty finding Muslim actors. So if you're listening to this, please, if you're watching this, if you're listening, and if you're a Muslim who is interested in acting, pursue it. Do it. Keep your boundaries. Just make sure you don't cross whatever boundaries you don't want to cross, you don't feel comfortable crossing, gender interaction, whatever. Even saying certain words, doing certain scenes, whatever. Have those boundaries and just leave the rest up to Allah.
Yeah.
Just
definitely don't go to Hollywood, especially after with the P. Diddy stuff and what's coming out.
Oh.
They clearly, there are some pedophilic satanic.
The Drake Bell, Nickelodeon, Dan Schneider.
Yeah. Yeah, how I think he sexually assaulted him, right?
when he was a so it wasn't Dan Schneider, it was Brian Peck, I think was like a producer for Nickelodeon who sexually assaulted Drake Bell when he was like 14, 15 years old.
Yeah, a lot of actors are coming out and saying if they didn't even get sexually assaulted, at minimum they got what they call like there's like a ritual of humiliation,
kind of like a grooming, right?
Yeah, like a humiliation ritual. Yeah, it's like, oh, crawl towards me, or like it's
really odd,
so freaky.
It's really
man.
It's really shaitanic, man.
Yeah,
it's really shaitanic.
So I think if even when Muslims start opening this up, we might even start attracting people that are non-Muslim who just want to act without all this garbage.
Without the garbage, yeah.
Which I think is most human beings.
I'll give an example. So I had the audition the other day. Again, I haven't auditioned in 8 years for anything. So it was my first audition, right? Like super rusty, right? The audition was from 7 to 10. Right now it's Ramadan. We're fasting. We have to pray as well, make sure we get our prayers in. And while the audition was happening, it was time for me to break fast. So what did I do? I broke my fast. I stepped out of the audition and I went to go pray Maghrib. Right? And so it doesn't have to be so complicated. Like if you're a Muslim and you want to act, don't make it so complicated on yourself. Like, yes, you're not going to get as many opportunities. That's 100% true. But you have to remember that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala closes one door, how many more does he open? Right? Or when he closes one door, how much better is the next door he's going to open? And we can apply this to every aspect of our life, with jobs, with the person we want to marry, with where we want to live. Everything is applicable, right?
Yeah, that's basically, if you're going to sum up this series, that's what it's teaching you.
It's qadr.
Why me?
Yeah.
It's because Allah's protecting
100%.
you. That's why you. Noaman Farouq, bro. It's a pleasure having you on, brother.
Bro, this was fun, man. Alhamdulillah.
All right, I hope you enjoyed.
Alhamdulillah, had a lot of fun.
Do you have anything else? Any last words before we hop off for the audience?
Remember Palestine. Make dua for Palestine. Make at least one dua every single day for Palestine. Keep them in your duas. Make dua for them because we're fasting. Our duas are accepted while we're fasting, right? Get up for tahajjud. Make dua for them at tahajjud. Our duas will be, we're not only are we fasting, but we're fasting and we're getting up for prayer. We're getting up to pray tahajjud and make dua at tahajjud. It's like double whammy, you know? And it's and for us here in Texas, like it's been raining too. So it's like it's raining and we're fasting. We're getting up for prayer. We're getting up for tahajjud to make dua and pray. It's like there's so many opportunities for our duas to be answered. Make time to pray for Palestine. Make time to pray for them.
We have a little bit more time, so
yes.
I want to add on to what you said about they were looking for actors.
Yes.
I was telling this actually to my friends the other day. I think next time they're gonna have a line.
Yes, inshallah.
Out the door.
And next
actors.
time, I hope they do like a more of like a casting call thing.
Yeah.
You know, because maybe they did. I just didn't see it, but I know definitely like Fawzi was like going to places to act people, and it's like you can like cut down that time instead of like going somewhere to ask people. Like just like put it out on Instagram. Hey, we're doing this series. If you want to act in it, here's the casting call, right? Like information you can just.
And bro, maybe in 5 years you'll have kids that are like really good at acting because their parents wanted them to be on like the Yaqeen series.
Yes.
Something like that. That'd be crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because I thought you when you just said that, I thought you were saying I'm gonna have kids in 5 years who are really good at acting. I'm like, Mahmoud. I just got.
What?
No.
You just got what? Okay. You just got married. Mashallah. Mashallah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
This was fun, man.
Oh, well, what's your Instagram handle?
So my Instagram handle is Noaman.Farouq10. So it's Noaman is Noaman. I spell it different from every other Noaman that's ever existed.
You do.
Noaman.Farouq, Farouq 10, the number 10. That's my Instagram handle. Catch me on Instagram.
Noaman Farouq. That's it. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you guys for listening to the Ansari Podcast.
See you later. Bye, guys.
Nice. I mean, that was dope.
Awesome.